This is a labor market. You've got your wage on your y-axis and quantity of labor on the x. You also have these two sloped curves. The upward sloping curve is the supply curve, and the downward sloping curve is the demand curve. We see this is at equilibrium at wage 1 and quantity of labor 1. Now let's add some policy. Let's assume this is the labor market for farm workers. Let's add Trump's heightened ICE raids to this. Bam! This is what we call a supply shock. So as you can see, the quantity of labor went down and wages had to go up. So since there are less farmhands or undocumented immigrants working on farms, that means that wages have to go up for the remainder of them. Some may argue, but what if Americans just took those jobs, right? Well then let's assume that we're still at Q1 and Americans take those jobs. However, Americans are probably going to want to get paid at least minimum wage, probably more, and want healthcare benefits and 401k plans. So, since we experience that, we'll experience a movement along the demand curve instead, which will ultimately result in a very similar outcome of increased wages and less quantity of labor. And people might say, so what? That's even better, because wages are increasing and Americans are getting paid that wage. However, that labor isn't free. That increases the output costs for farmers, so they're ultimately going to have to raise prices to retail grocery stores. And in order to maintain their profits, the grocery stores are going to have to increase their prices as well, resulting in, you guessed it, increased grocery prices for all. Even more expensive milk, even more expensive eggs. The list goes on and on. And honestly, I don't think that Americans will make up that supply difference. So ultimately, we will be resulted of a mixture of what we talked about previously. We'll ultimately be left with a movement along the demand curve, and we're also going to be left with a supply shock of less workers.